Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to be talking about moving as a musician. Does it really help you to become more expressive or not? So it's a big question, and it's a question that a lot of my students have had over the years, and it's a question that I have been exploring on my own for my whole lifetime as a violinist. It's a topic that comes up frequently amongst new players and amateurs, beginners, but also amongst professionals like myself. I think there's a lot of ambiguity as to how much movement is appropriate for what circumstances, and it's a really loaded topic, so I'm excited to talk about it with you today. Before I get into the meat of the conversation, or the good vegetables if you're vegetarian, I want to just say hello to everybody who's here and welcome you to my weekly talks. I do this every Thursday at 2 p.m. And I'd like to encourage you, please, to throw your comments out there. Tell me how you're feeling about what I'm saying. If anything rings true or you want to argue, just throw it all out there and feel free to share this video with your friends or in the groups that you're in if you feel like that's appropriate. Anyway, I just love to get the message out about a mind-body approach to music making. I'm the creator of what I call the art of freedom for musicians. If you haven't met me yet, I have a free Facebook group that I invite you to join. It's called the Musicians Mind Body Practice Tribe, and I'll give you the link for that at the end, and I think it's actually at the top of this post. So feel free to stop by and join, and we can continue discussions there about anything you're curious about having to do with what you're doing with your mind when you're playing your instrument, any instrument, by the way, not just violin, and what's going on in your body if you have any pain or tension issues that you're dealing with, or performance anxiety. Those are some of the main topics that we deal with in the practice tribe, as in all of my online teaching. So I'm seeing some people coming on, and I want to greet people as you arrive. Just say hello if you're here, and then I know you're there. If you're watching the replay, thanks for watching as well. Angel and Barb, I'm so glad you're here. It's great to have you back. So what I wanted to, there's so much about this topic that I'd like to share. I want to start with just a very personal a little bit about my story having to do with moving and being expressive as a violinist. But really, anything I say applies to any instrument. So my work is absolutely not just for violinists and violists, even though I do a lot of that. So a little bit about my background on this topic. I've been playing the violin since I was 4, and I wanted a violin desperately when I was 2. My mom found out about the Suzuki method when I was 4 and got me into that world, which I'm very thankful for. I was trained to get passionately into what I was doing. And that resulted in a lot of moving around, okay? So I was one of those violinists that was like expressing everything with a lot of angst and passion, and I threw everything that I was into my violin playing. I have pictures of me as a soloist with orchestras. Actually, right now, I think I'm thinking of a picture of me playing with the Pittsburgh Symphony when I was a teenager, and I'm so twisted in my body. I also can just immediately remember some pictures of myself as a student at Indiana University, where I'm seated and I'm playing literally with, right now my legs are forward, but when I used to play seated, I used to have my torso so twisted that my violin would be over here and my legs would be aiming out that way. So you probably can't see that now, but I was totally twisted, and my right leg was way back off the right side of my chair, one leg forward, one leg back, and I was just like ready to do battle, right? It was almost like fencing or something, but it was all this big twist and thrust of myself, and then I was flailing all over the place. So that was me then. I'm a different person now in many ways, but why am I a different person? Basically, I've lived decades since then, and I've gone through a lot, and I've done a lot of soul searching, and I have found different ways to find myself and discover more of who I am in my depths. I've been very interested in meditation practices, for instance. And actually, since I was a teenager, I was curious about meditation and world religions and like all kinds of things that helped me get more in touch with the center of who I am in my heart. I hadn't thought about that as a kid, but I expressed it all. Like everything from my heart went out like that, but it went out through a body full of tension. Okay? Fast forward a few decades, maybe a couple decades, I found the Alexander technique. Why did I find the Alexander technique? Because I was suffering a lot in mind and body. I'm not going to go into the emotional suffering. I was just not really a very happy person at that point, and it was showing up as pain in my body. I had a lot of neck pain. I couldn't actually turn my head to the right at all. And so finally I was kind of desperate, and I did find the Alexander technique, and I found a fantastic teacher. My neck pain was gone almost instantly. It took like a couple lessons for the neck pain to be gone, even though doctors and chiropractors had not been able to touch it. So I fell in love with the Alexander technique completely, and it has changed my life dramatically in the best ways imaginable, right? I mean, now I've been doing this since 2003, so I have had improvements in my emotional being. I'm a very happy person now. And I have a lot of fun. I don't get bored ever. I'm constantly curious, asking questions, wondering about things. Playing the violin has just, it's different. It's totally different now, because when I was a teenager on a soloist path, I was very focused and I worked hard with tension, and I was successful because I did everything I was supposed to do and I did it well. That might sound good, but under the surface, I was not a happy camper. I was full of tension. You can be successful and full of tension, you know, and that was me. But I didn't even know it until I started feeling kind of miserable and my neck hurt. Then I found my Alexander teacher, and layer by layer started unpeeling, and I started discovering what was underneath, which was all this tension I didn't even know I was carrying around. So what does that have to do with moving when you're playing the violin? Well, remember I said when I was really into it as a teenager and college student, successful performer, I was soloing with orchestras around the world. I was winning international competitions, super success, and a ton of tension and lots of expressive movement all over the place. Like when I'm talking right now, I can get super expressive, but look at all the tension in my neck. That is not good for me. You're probably laughing, right? Send me those laughing emojis. No, seriously. I have gone through an Alexander transformation, and all that means is that I have learned how to observe myself in a more objective way. And I've learned how to get curious about the truth of what's really going on deep inside myself, mentally, emotionally, psychically, spiritually, physically, just to be more in touch with what's going on. Really getting to know myself. And that's what the Alexander technique is so good at. And as soon as you start really getting curious and observing yourself objectively, things start to open up in the best way. And all that inner joy and energy has a chance to express itself, free of the tension that we mistake for being expressive. A lot of the movement that we see in performers, even really famous, successful ones, a lot of the movement that they are engaged in while they're making music is not only unnecessary, but it gets in the way of them being truly, deeply expressive. A lot of those movements that you see are habitual movements that are infused with tension that doesn't have to be there. Now, just imagine if you're learning how to play an instrument, if you're a beginner or you haven't been playing very long, and you get excited about it and passionate about it, but you're excited in a kind of tense way, whereas like you want to learn it really fast and you can't wait to get to the next piece and you're all excited and then you're learning and you're progressing and everything's great. Look at all the tension that I'm bringing to learning those pieces from the very beginning. Okay, so that was probably me because I loved the violin and I passionately put everything into it. But that was an expressivity that actually was getting in the way of a deeper emotional connection with myself and the music. Now, this may not click with you right away because it kind of goes against what we have been trained to think of as expressive. Very often, if you see a performer who's very still when they play, that can seem like they're not being expressive. If that does happen, I challenge you to close your eyes. Don't watch the video. Don't watch the performer. Don't let those movements influence how you're hearing the performance. Close your eyes and listen to the performance. Now, if it sounds dead, then that person is stiff when they're still. It's possible to be still and be stiff. It's possible to be still and be totally free inwardly. And that takes me to my main point of today's talk. The question I threw out there in the title, do you need to move to be more expressive? Well, yes and no. If you are not moving at all and you're holding yourself into position, into the right posture, and you think, this is the way to play my instrument and this is right, and I don't need to move a lot because I'm not wasting energy. If you're thinking in a way that is about being right and correct and having a good posture, you're likely to be stiffening yourself. You're likely to have less of a flow of energy. Now, life is a flow of energy. It's movement. Life is movement, and you absolutely need to have that flowing movement of life happening inside of you while you make music, and that is what gets expressed, ideally. I mean, what do you really want? You've got to be clear about what your priorities are, right? Do you want to express the essence of life, that joyous mystery of creation? Do you want to be the artist that allows that to go through you and out your instrument to your audience, where you're almost like your ego, your personality is like so much in the background that the essence of the music is what shows up and gets shown out? There's that way to be a musician, and that's what I'm interested in personally. I want to get out of the way to let the life force express itself through my music. Are you interested in that? Or are you interested in more of a cult of the personality? And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I am not here to judge what people are choosing to make their priority. Far from it, okay? I could do that, but I'm not really interested in that. That's not in alignment with what I want for myself or for you. I'm just here to give you maybe a bigger perspective or slightly different perspective so that you realize that you have choices that maybe you didn't realize you had before. Another option, like I said, sort of cult of the personality, is what we are used to seeing. Most artists are like divas, and they want to show that they are the ones making the music, right? And that's when you get really expressive with your movements, and yes, you play the violin, and yes, I'm really into it because I'm a great violinist, and oh, I'm so expressive, right? That's when the body goes around and moves around, and oh gosh, but audiences they can love that. They just eat it up. Right? If you move the body with the music and you look like, oh, this is the sad part, it's so sad, or this is the happy part, let's play happy music. I'm sorry, I'm sort of, I could go on and on and on about this. To me personally, it's just a little irritating. But it's an option, okay? If what you want is to perform in this way, realize it's not just about the music. It becomes entertainment for your audience. It becomes a show. You are becoming an actor or actress. You're becoming a dancer. You're not just a musician if that is important to you. And there's nothing wrong with it, okay? I'm not judging. There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to dance while you're playing, I mean, look at fiddlers, like country musicians. They're out there dancing around, and they're so free, and they're having a great time, and they're talking with each other, and it's lovely. That can be so heartfelt and free, and when it's done in combination with the first version that I was talking about, where it's the essence of music that is being expressed through you as a conduit, then that can be really magical. That can be fantastic. You can have a magical show, right? When you combine that expression of the life force with an acting and an expressing through the visual performance that you're giving. Why not? Why not? I play in Apollo's Fire, and that's part of what gets delivered. Apollo's Fire is the Cleveland Baroque Orchestra, and we are specialists. We're great musicians, right? We get together, and there's touring around the world. We are very highly, highly successful. And it is a choice for the conductor and the musicians in that group to combine all those aspects, namely the auditory aspect and the visual aspect. We are actually literally asked to move around in an expressive way, okay? So there's nothing wrong with it, and audience it, okay? But here's the big but. All right. When I am a part of that, I need to have that first version that I expressed combined with the second one. For me, if my priority is more of the entertainment, and like looking for entertainment value, and I want to please the audience more than I care about expressing that wealth of life force, then for me, things get out of sync. I am just as happy, or personally, I'm often more happy when my music is taken for the auditory. Okay, so you've got to make these choices for yourself. When I said be clear about what your priorities are, why are you making music? Are you doing it for yourself to enhance your experience of your life through music? Are you doing that to connect with your audience in the same spirit? If that's what you want, you don't need external movement to be superimposed on that. You do not need to express the music through movements that show it visually. It's enough to be an auditory experience. It's enough. You may choose to include the visual, but you don't have to. It's an option. If you prefer to be, I mean, think of people who sit in contemplation. Think of monks. They are still for hours and hours and hours, and they have the life force and energy that it's just building and building and building, and it's uplifting and enlightening, right? But on the outside, you don't see that. They look as still as a rock from the outside. So there's internal movement and there's external movement. You can have internal movement with external stillness, and that's great. You don't need anything else than that. Of course, you still have to move your arms for, to move the bow and everything, the fingers. I'm not talking about that obvious movement that has to happen. I'm talking about the other kind of more expressive movements from the inside. So there's internal movement, external movement. And so you can have just the external movement, and then it gets really superficial. And then if you close your eyes, you hear that the sound suffers because there's a lot of tension in there that you don't even know is there. So I think that when you're wanting to learn how to have a kind of external movement that is organic to the music. So let's say you can do either the internal movement without external movement. You can also have internal movement with external movement. And that's just as wonderful. To me, they're just as valid. But I find that when you add in the external movement, it's easier to add in tension that is not necessary. So when you're wanting to learn how to undo excess tension and get in touch with the depths of your music making, then don't get distracted by external movements. You don't need that stuff unless it's your priority to entertain, and the visual becomes just as important as the auditory. So I hope this is making sense for all of you. Just to simplify it, if you only get one thing out of today's video, this idea of internal and external movement, I think, is really essential. And the internal movement, if you want to make really, truly, deeply moving music, where you are moved deeply and you move your audiences deeply, there has to be a connection between what's in your heart and what's in your audience's heart. That's what moves people truly. Now, if you superimpose external movements without really being in touch with that internal movement and energy that's going on, and you make the external a higher priority than the internal, then things get thrown off balance and tension comes into play, and your sound automatically will suffer. I guarantee you, your sound will suffer. But don't take my word for it. Experiment and video yourself, record yourself, and don't watch. Listen to the sound. Do different experiments with paying attention to the internal movement and the ease in your system and the freedom. Record it. And then play with the external moving around where it feels like you're being so emotional. Because sometimes you can be tricked. In fact, I warn you, you can be easily tricked by thinking that when that external movement is there, you are actually more passionate and more expressive to your audience. It's a trap. I am telling you, close your eyes and listen to the music. People are easily tricked by the visual. So you need to be really clear about what your priority is. If your priority is that heart-to-heart connection, being moved and moving your audience, and you want it to be the sound that is your priority, forget about the external movement. It'll happen if it needs to happen. Don't even think about it. Who cares? The external movement can be there or it cannot be there. But if you try to do the external movement, forget it. You're getting in the way of your sound. I guarantee you. Again, test it out. Listen to the recording. I think for me, making music is primarily an auditory experience. I want people to be able to listen to a CD of me playing and have the best possible musical experience that I can give them. Now, if that recording was made with me trying to be expressive visually, that's just going to get in the way of the auditory experience through a CD. I promise. And if I want the visual experience on stage to be the priority, then the CD won't be as good, but that's okay too, because in the moment from the stage, my audience may prefer to have all those aspects, to really be entertained both visually and auditorily. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but you've got to know what your priority is. When I go to play with Apollo's Fire, I know before I go, I am not just a musician. I am also an actor, expressing with, visual. This is asked of me. This is not from me. This is what is asked of me in my job. I need to have my facial expressions match the music. I need to have my body moving to match the music in order to accomplish what the director wants. She wants a visual experience for the audience just as much as the fabulous auditory experience. They're equally important in that case. So I know that I'm an actor and I'm a dancer, all right? I'm not just a musician when I do those shows. And it's fun. We have a great time. So again, it comes down to what you want. Be clear about what your priorities are. Ask yourself, is music a visual experience or is it just auditory for you? Ask yourself, where does the sound come from? Are you being able to get out of the way so that sound can flow through you without excess muscular tension that is not needed to express that sound? What happens when you move? That's where you've got to record yourself and listen, because you're going to feel like it's better. A lot of you, not everyone, but a lot of you are going to feel like it's more expressive when you're doing all this stuff. But don't get tricked. Listen to the audio recording. Test it out. So find out what happens. All right. And how do you know when your movements are getting in the way? Well, that's what I'm saying. You got to record yourself and you got to ask people to listen. Unless the visual is a part of it, then they got to watch too, right? And give you feedback on your movements. How do you make your movements natural? You don't. You don't make your movements natural. You undo the unnatural movements. You undo the excess tension, and you need a method for being able to do that. Alexander technique, hands down, is the best one out there for this. So if you want to know more, last thing I wanted to say, experimentation, getting objective feedback. I said that before, but just want to reiterate that. Learn how to do this. You learn through this process, okay? So if you want to learn more about this, I teach online and I would love to help you with this. So I have group classes for musicians, a class specifically for violinists and violists, if that's you. And then I also work with all kinds of musicians. I teach private lessons online, and I'm talking about the Art of Freedom lessons, where I teach the Alexander technique applied to your music making. So if you're curious at all, then you can contact me. You can private message me or email me, of course. I'm easy to find on Facebook. So just ask. And your very first step, if you're not a member of the Musicians Mind Body Practice Tribe, you've got to join it. We have so much fun. And we are a lively, growing community. If you've got tension issues, you want to explore these ideas of moving and stillness while music making. If you've got any kind of pain or discomfort when you make your music, muscular pain or tendonitis, carpal tunnel, neck pain and back pain, shoulder pain, all that kind of soreness and pain, I can help you with that. Join our tribe. It's free. You have nothing to lose. And there's also a free download that you can get, which is my 7 keys to great music making. So just come on over there. If you're not a member yet, here is the link. So I'm just going to take a peek at the comments. I know I've been talking a lot. Have you noticed I get passionate about this topic? I really do. So I'm just going to take a peek at the comments. Barb says, I find that choreographed movement very distracting as a listener. Yeah, I've actually been in a lot of performances, and I can think of one incredibly famous, amazing violinist right now who I will not name. He's a fantastic musician, but I cannot watch him when he plays because there's so much tension. And you know, you pick up things, whatever you see in someone else, there's something in our brains called mirror neurons. We reflect, that's empathy. We reflect all the tension that anybody else is presenting to us, and then we have to process that. So I love listening to that violinist, but I need to close my eyes. I need to listen to an auditory recording. I cannot watch that person. I can also think of a female violinist who is even worse for me, and she's also super famous. I cannot watch her because there's so much tension. And also, when I go to the concerts, or if I do end up seeing these people on YouTube or whatever, it's kind of sad for me because these people are so successful and they're so great. And they've spent their lives doing what they do. But I know they would be so much better and more. They'd have so much more of a depth of expression, and their sound would project because it would be so huge if they understood how to get out of the way and undo that stuff that they were doing that is unnecessary. So I agree with you, Barb. I totally, yeah, and I'm not even talking about choreographed movement because the people I just mentioned, they don't do it on purpose. They are not choreographing anything, but a lot of musicians actually do choreograph, and sometimes our group does a little bit of that. But yeah, I think that can be distracting more for some people than others. I agree with you. So yes, I'm hoping that this has been interesting for all of you. How about, I would just love to get a yes, or give me some sort of feedback also. I'd love to see a little more, some more comments coming back. Or if you have any questions, I'll just stay on for another moment. I know I've been going on for half an hour. It's longer than I like to do these videos, but oh, I can take that off too. That's probably annoying. So any questions anybody has, or you may not know how to explore these topics that I'm talking about, especially if you're a beginner or you haven't been playing for very long. This may seem kind of beyond you, but I'm telling you, now is the time to start thinking about it. If you're new to your instrument, if you're a beginner, it's going to be so much easier for you to not develop the habits of excess tension in your movements. Now is the time to undo the habitual tension. It's harder later. It doesn't mean it's not possible, and actually, it's actually not that hard if you have the system that I can give you. It can be very easy. But what I mean is it takes more practice once your habits are fully ingrained from a lifetime of being a musician. So if you're a beginner, this is the time to learn how to not add in all that excess tension. This is the time to learn how to allow organic, natural movement to arise, or to learn to be okay with being externally still. Think of Heifetz. Heifetz was one of the most famous, greatest violinists of all time. He was very still when he played, but his sound was huge, so expressive. You would never think that he was so still when you listen without watching. When I was a kid, I didn't like Heifetz. Honestly, I didn't. Everybody else loved Heifetz, and I'm like, the guy is stiff. I interpreted that external stillness to mean that he was stiff. I didn't yet have the skills of observation. I hadn't honed my auditory skills yet. And now when I listen to Heifetz, I hear a rich vibrancy that I didn't hear as a kid. And vice versa. My idol when I was a kid, one of them was Nathan Milstein, who I also had the good fortune to study with for 5 summers. I loved his playing, and he moved around more. Okay? And I liked that. He seemed to be much more organic in his movements. And I think his movements were very organic. Now I actually listen with my eyes closed, and I don't really like what I hear all the time. So your tastes do evolve, and the more sensitive you become to tension as opposed to flow and ease, you start hearing things differently. You start hearing the tension in the sound that you didn't hear before. Okay, I think I need to end now. Okay, and if you're watching the replay, your comments are just as important as anyone else's. So please send me your comments and questions and join the Mind Body Practice Tribe. Okay, and please share this with your friends if you found it interesting. And I'll see you over in the Mind Body Practice Tribe. Happy practicing, have fun experimenting. Let me know how things go, okay? I really want your feedback. I want to know what you thought about my talk today. So let me know. Either here in comments or message me privately or just tell me in the practice tribe, okay? Happy practicing, and I wish you flow on the inside, from the inside out as you make your music, and be happy. Lots of love.